Hey guys, we're here on Channel Weird. I'm Clyde Lewis. Thanks for joining us. I'm very excited. I'm always excited when I come on here because I get some exciting guests. This is one of my favorite people, though. I mean, you know, you go through a lot of people. And there are a lot of people that I'm impressed with. But I've known Cliff Barackman for a long time. And, of course, he's one of these guys that he's on TV more so than I am. Or he's more famous than I am because he's on Animal Planet. He's got a show called Finding Bigfoot. And he's got a huge museum, and it's all out here in the Pacific Northwest. Cliff, welcome to Channel Weird. I always get those two confused. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for
That's good.
having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh yeah. First of all, I'm very, very impressed with all of your work, what you do, and we've talked many times at these Bigfoot festivals. I was fortunate enough to make it to the Northwest and see a Bigfoot in my lifetime, which is nice. I never thought I would, but I did. And so I don't think I've asked you, have you ever seen Bigfoot?
Yeah, I think I have. Yeah, it wasn't a great sighting, which is why I think, but I'm convinced I did. But being a relatively, level-headed guy, I always leave a little window open because it was a thermal imaging sighting.
Oh, okay.
I saw it through a thermal imager. If it wasn't a Sasquatch, it was the weirdest human you can imagine. I'm pretty confident I saw it.
And I agree with you. I mean, when you see something like when I saw my Bigfoot, it was kind of like the idea that it's got to be explainable. But I mean, when you think about it, you can always mistake a bear for a Bigfoot, or you can mistake an animal for a Bigfoot. This looked nothing like a bear or an animal. This looked like some muscular dude with, Robert Plant-like hair, and it looked like he was wearing, for a face, he looked like he was wearing a nylon stocking over his face because everything was kind of flattened out and looking kind of weird. Yeah. That's when I realized it was a Bigfoot, because the face looked nothing like something I'd ever seen. I mean, I was always told it was like a hominid that looks more like man, and it did look kind of like a man, but the nose was more flattened out, and the eyes were kind of like closer set.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, this doesn't look like something. And what's bothersome was, everybody says, why don't you ever get a photo? Or why are photos so blurry? It's because when you're sitting there and you're watching it, you're not saying to yourself, oh, immediately I got to get out the camera and start filming. You also, and you're grabbing everything.
No, you're processing the whole time.
You first process it.
Yeah, and that takes a while. I mean, no matter how fast your processor is, because you're looking at something that everybody else tells you it doesn't exist. And
right.
You're going, and for me, I was actually on camera when it happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were filming Finding Bigfoot. It's a North Carolina episode. When Moneymaker yells, "There's something on the hill." The thing on the hill was the thing I saw.
Right.
Now, we didn't get it on camera. In the episode, they made a circle around it. In my opinion, kind of misled the audience into thinking that we filmed it. But the cameras weren't running at the time. We were on break. And so when I was looking at this thing and I'm going, well, that's either a Sasquatch or a human. There are no other possibilities. It was walking on two legs.
Right.
I was processing the whole time, and I didn't want to give the camera this over-the-top excited nonsense if I'm watching a human. And it took a while for me to figure out, like, holy crap, that's not a person.
See, and it would be great if, and there probably will eventually happen, I'm sure. It'd be great if you come upon a Bigfoot. He has no idea you're observing him or her, and you're got the camera ready, and you're thinking and processing it through. But it's like, same with a UFO sighting. It's like people say, why are UFOs always blurry? Well, they're shooting past your camera, and sure, if you can get one hovering, great. So they're, ooh, I got a hovering UFO. But if they're like shooting, you have something shooting past your phone, how are you going to get? You can't.
No.
And when Bigfoot shows up, it's like in my experience, I was at the East City Ranch when it happened.
Yeah, by Trout Lake.
Trout Lake, which is, there was a fire on the other side of Mount Adams. So I'm sure they were all like coming to that area. And I should have known that there was something going on because the night before there was a lot of strange animal behavior and some stuff. But, I was sitting there just drinking my coffee on a Sunday morning in that area where you all gather together. And I looked down the hallway through, it was like there's this wash area, looking through there, and standing there eating an apple looked like a muscular dude. And then I saw the face, and what I said, and this is just how I did it, I went, Bigfoot. I just, in my mind, and then I looked up and I said to everybody, Bigfoot. And they all looked and they saw it, and they ran towards it, and then I went, I didn't get my camera out, I didn't do anything, because you're just not thinking about grabbing a camera when you're having your experience. And then if it stood there and didn't react to the people running towards it, maybe I could have gotten a camera shot, maybe a little potato shot, as they call it. I took it with a potato. And so that's the frustration, I think. And even, there have been times, I'm sure, when you're doing this TV show for the Animal Planet, that you've probably been frustrated like that too, right?
Oh yeah, of course. And a long time ago, I do a lot of Bigfooting. Okay, it's not just on Animal Planet. That went on for 9 years, but I've been Bigfooting for 26, 27 years now. Spending 2 weeks alone out in Northern California. Like I do it. I take it pretty seriously. And as an experiment, as I'm driving around in the woods, maybe going from one location to another or exploring new areas in the car, I always have a camera right next to me. Between the two seats, a video camera. And as an experiment, I decided one year I'm going to start trying to film every animal I come across. Deer, bear, owl, whatever. It doesn't elk.
It's good for comparison.
It is. And what I found is that I've seen a lot of animals over the years, and I've photographed maybe 5% of them. Because like you see them on the road, you go, oh my God. And like, for example, about 2 years ago, I was Bigfooting in the Blue Mountains, Eastern Oregon, Washington, outside of Walla Walla. And I came around this corner and there's a pack of wolves on the road about 120 yards ahead of me.
Right.
I see 4 pups basically kind of weaving in and out of the grass on the side. I went, I fumble. I get the camera on. It powers up. It takes a few seconds. And pretty soon, and I'm watching, I'm going to blow it. And then pretty soon, the 3 of the 4 pups headed down the hill and 1 stood there. And then I got the camera out and it still had to focus. I mean, seriously, like 8 seconds went by, which seems like a lifetime. And I did get video of 1 wolf pup in the road staring at me. But like if it was a Sasquatch looking at me, just jumping up, there's no way I would have got it.
Well, and that's another thing that I think a lot of people don't realize either. If they spend any time in the woods or any time in the mountains, they always say, well, why hasn't a carcass of Bigfoot been found? And I would say, when was the last time? And I'm sure, people say, well, I saw one, a while ago. I'm just saying, when was the last time you've come across a carcass of a deer or a cougar or any other predator or anything in the forest? Chances are you don't run into the carcasses all that much.
I've been asking for the last 27 years, to naturalists and rangers, etc. Have you ever come across a naturally dead bear or mountain lion carcass?
Right.
Naturally dead is the key, though.
Yeah,
because
exactly. I mean, shooting one, yeah.
Shooting one, exactly. Or you do find deer and elk because they're prey animals. They don't get to choose where they die.
Right.
But the animals at the top of the food chain, the bear, the deer, no, not the deer, the bear, the mountain lions, bobcats, Sasquatches, they actually get to choose where they die. Like they feel sick one day or something like that, and they squirrel themselves away in probably the thickest brush you can imagine because they're vulnerable at that time. Right,
exactly.
And so one day they die there instead of getting better. So even to begin it all, they actually literally, not purposefully perhaps with intent, but literally hid their bodies. Okay. Now, within a few hours to a few days, scavengers start moving in, and they start dispersing the body parts. A leg goes over there, an arm goes over here. The hair is eaten by moths, and the bones are eaten. Actually, the bones are a really good source of calcium, and calcium is a very rare commodity in North American forests.
Right.
So, animals such as the most common animal in North America by biomass is the deer mouse. Deer mice eat bones. Deer mice eat bones, porcupines eat bones, wood rats eat bones. Check this out. Deer and elk eat bones. That's where they get the calcium for their antlers. And in fact, in our museum, we address this question because it's really commonly asked.
Right.
People don't understand how effective the forests are at recycling animal remains. And I have 2 photographs on the wall just as proof of elk. And in each of those photographs, the elk have have bones coming out of their mouth because they're chomping away at it.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people don't understand how the ecosystem works and how, and even I remember the first argument I ever heard when Lloyd Pye and I were discussing this a long time ago when he was alive, and he was the guy that re-sparked my interest in Bigfoot. Was he was telling me, he says, even in the forests of the Pacific Northwest, it is so hard to find things because it's just one big carpet of trees, and there are planes that have gone down in the forests of the Pacific Northwest. You can't find the plane.
Yeah, I think in the 1990s, I caught a documentary about Bigfoot, and Peter Byrne was on it, and he was throwing around a stat at the time, and I think at the time in the 1990s, and I'm sure it's changed since then, there were, I think, 74 aircraft that have been completely lost between Northern California and Alaska that they still don't know where they are.
Right.
74,
And there's another place, Alaska is another hotspot for Bigfoot sightings.
Oh, yeah.
Because of the forests and the things. I mean, and you look around you and you hear the stories. Lately, I've been hearing a lot of stories about Bigfoot being seen, I guess, in the, I don't know what you call it, the Appalachian regions,
Oh, yeah,
these
yeah, it's
other
very
regions.
good out there. Uh-huh.
So what, have we seen a migratory animal?
No. What we're seeing are a resurgence of interest in the subject where researchers are actually out there gathering information. Sasquatches are a thinly spread but continent-wide a species, basically, just like bear, just like black bear, just like elk or anything else. In suitable habitat, they exist. As proof in that, you can look back into the 1800s and even the 1700s, really, of when the dominant European population started filling out the inside of the United States. Moving westward from the East Coast, and then of course moving in from the West Coast as well, because the Russians and Spaniards were out here. And as they pushed into the interior, they ran across Sasquatches. They didn't have the word Sasquatch. The word Sasquatch was coined in the 1920s. The word Bigfoot came about in 1958. They called them other things, usually wild man or hairy man or
Momo.
Momo was a 1972 or 73 thing in Missouri.
Right.
The Missouri monster,
Skunk ape.
M.O. Skunk ape is in Florida. But back in the 1800s, they would call them like a what's it? Or a wood booger, which is one of my favorite names for them.
Wood booger.
Yeah, wood booger. I get those if I don't shower after 4 or 5 days.
That's a Beavis and Butthead thing.
Yeah, totally.
He said wood booger.
Yeah, but they still had or a wood devil is another real common one. They called them that in the 1800s up by Mount St. Helens.
Right.
But they had words for these things, and they slapped the name on them. What's really interesting is that if you look at the parallel discoveries of the other ape species, like gorillas, for example. Gorillas were discovered initially in the lowland gorilla in like 1850, 1851, something like that.
Yeah.
And after the discovery of the gorilla and when news of that spread, Sasquatches were starting to be called gorillas because they kind of resemble gorillas in a way.
Yeah.
And so you can see that when words came into the vernacular that were appropriate for what people were seeing, they would slap those words on them.
I always, in the beginning, when I had an interest when I was younger, I heard mountain gorilla. And that's where I immediately thought, yeah, I mean, what's wrong with the idea of having a mountain gorilla that probably is, it's not a wide population of mountain gorilla, but somehow there's a mountain gorilla or several mountain gorillas that have a habitat in the Pacific Northwest, have a habitat in other forested areas, and I had no problem with that.
Yeah, like a wood ape is a real common name amongst the loggers, for example. The wood apes, or brush apes is another one. Now, gorilla, of course, is not only a species, it's a genus name as well. Gorilla is the lowland gorilla. And then mountain gorilla has gorilla something else. I forgot the species name.
Right.
But they're a small population in Rwanda. But an interesting thing about the mountain gorilla is that they're very rare. I think there's less than 400 or about 400 individuals left in the world. They're extraordinarily endangered, okay? But they're the largest primate that is currently recognized on the planet. And they were discovered in the 20th century, in like 1902 or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. So again, that's just another victory for cryptozoology, which is the study of hidden animals or undiscovered animals.
Yeah, and that's the I think too that I remember a while back they said that I guess they found Yeti bones, or they found a species of Yeti that existed in the Himalayas, and they were saying it's some sort of a bear hominid hybrid.
Okay, yeah. They're it's not quite the way you said it, but yeah,
Right.
the whispers that came to your ear are somewhat correct.
Yes.
A guy named Dr. Brian Sykes, who's a very renowned, he's passed away now, but a very renowned genealogist, or he knows his DNA. We'll say.
Exactly.
He kind of got on the Bigfoot thing for a little while and started testing samples. Some of his stuff, I don't think he wasn't as thorough and scientific as I think he should have been in some ways. For example,
Sure.
like one of the samples that he tested came from an expedition I was on. And we knew it was tapir. We knew it was a tapir hair. And he tested it and said, oh, yeah, this is a tapir hair. The orang pendek isn't real. And I said, well, we told you it was a tapir hair when we gave it to you. Like, what's up with that?
Right.
What he discovered, see, if you're familiar with the Yeti literature, the writing that's been done on the Yetis, then you know that there's 3 different commonly reported types of Yetis in that area of the world.
Right.
There's a really big one, like a Sasquatch. There's a smaller, more ape-like animal that we have footprint casts or footprint photographs of. And then there's another species that everybody knew was a bear. Everybody knew it was a bear. But Yeti is a term that kind of loosely translates from mete, which is man-like thing.
Right.
Okay, and then a bear stands up, it's somewhat man-like.
Right.
So they slapped the name Yeti on this bear species as well. And so Brian Sykes actually literally got a hair off of a bear pelt and tested it and said, "Oh, this is a bear hair." Well, no crap. We got it off a bear pelt. We know it was a bear because we know where you got it from.
Exactly.
And therefore, Yetis aren't real? What's that?
Well, yeah. I mean,
that's not science. That's nonsense.
See, that's the thing is that I think people need to understand that. I mean, well, we'll talk about this, about the idea that if you name something Bigfoot, it has some sort of a veneer of tabloid. But if you go into the scientific nature of it, there is a serious investigation into what's happening. Clyde Barackman with us today on Channel Weird. We'll be back. Bigfoot, of course, amazing talk about Bigfoot. We'll be back with more. Don't go away.
AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Are you stressed? I mean, who isn't? Anxiety creeping in? No, not that. Is sleep hard to attain because your brain just won't slow down? We're living in crazy times, and the fear knob has been turned up. Okay, there's an answer. Take a big breath, exhale, and go log on to AncientLifeOil.com. CBD, broad and full spectrum, organic and non-GMO CBD for you to enjoy. Change your tune from fear to calm, from brain overload to clear thinking. 0.003 THC on full spectrum and 0% THC on broad spectrum. Competitive pricing with the best quality. Also know everything is going to get better. No worries, be happy. CBD can help calm so your nerves don't think they're a 6-string electric guitar. Enjoy life, smile, and log on to AncientLifeOil.com for great CBD. That's AncientLifeOil.com. You'll be glad you did.
Hey guys, it's Clyde Lewis. Have you ever wanted Ground Zero merchandise but didn't know where to go? Well, I want to let you know that we now have our own online store with such items as t-shirts, hoodies, decals, tote bags, and other exclusive specialty apparel. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. Coming soon will be signed posters and coffee mugs available as we are constantly adding new items. So shop today at the official Ground Zero store by going to groundzeromerch.com. That's groundzeromerch.com.
Following a disaster, your home emergency kit will be invaluable. Building a kit doesn't take long, and you'll be glad you did when disaster strikes. Here's a list of items to include: a first aid kit, battery-powered or hand crank radio, flashlight, extra batteries, an emergency whistle, cell phone with charger, cash and small bills, a local map with your family meeting place identified, food and water to last 2 weeks, garbage bags, dust masks, and seasonal clothing and footwear. Add prescription medications or any other important items unique to your family's needs. Once you've created your kit, check food expiry dates once a year and update seasonal clothing for growing children. If you have pets, make sure you have everything your furry friends need in an easy-to-carry grab-and-go bag. To learn more about preparing an emergency kit, visit mil.wa.gov/preparedness and get 2 weeks ready.
Be sure to get your low-cost 2-week supply of food with a miraculous 25-year shelf life by going to preparewithgroundzero.com.
Have you noticed that well-known and controversial talk show hosts have recently been censored on the internet by corporate and political interests? This is Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero Radio. And in order to counter against the suppression of information, we've decided to create our own private digitalized playground called Aftermath.media. It's an exclusive online multimedia library featuring videos, movies, audio clips, archive shows, ebooks, e-magazines, documents, and so much more. Our news aggregator, Newsifer, provides current news relating to many of the topics we cover. We'll also be hosting other Ground Zero-friendly podcasts like Into the Paranormal with Jeremy Scott and The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. Aftermath.media has a social media platform along with a chat room to interact with many of our listeners. And about once a month, you can chat with me about anything. Mobile apps for Android and Apple are now available. The monthly subscription for Aftermath.media is only $9.99 a month. This includes exclusive access to our library and Ground Zero archive podcasts. If you're just interested in having access to the archive podcast, it's only $4.99 a month. So sign up today by going to Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media. Hey guys, it's Channel Weird. Getting used to those posts. Basically. Cliff Brockman's with us. Finding Bigfoot on Animal Planet. I get annoyed by something in the Bigfoot, I guess in the realms of the Bigfoot cryptozoological whole thing. I get annoyed by people who cannot separate the substance between aliens and Bigfoot, or dimensions and Bigfoot. I think it basically destroys any scientific endeavor to find the creature, or at least to prove its existence. And I think this is where a lot of people, when you say, hey, I saw a Bigfoot, they immediately go, oh, it's a bear, or it's just a trick of light, or all this other stuff. But if you say, hey, what is this? Then people don't get critical. But the minute you start saying Bigfoot or Sasquatch, immediately they're thinking, oh, you're a little crazy there. I mean, probably think it's some dimensional monkey. How do you feel about that thing, that sort of stuff?
Well, I certainly hear a lot of that stuff. But mind you, I'm an evidence-based researcher, okay? Evidence means an awful lot to me. Stories are a form of evidence, but they're awful soft, so to speak. We're kind of squishy, shall we say, because stories from people depend on the quality of observer, also the how good of a communicator they are, and all that sort of stuff. There's a lot of squishiness and subjectivity to it. So I like relying directly on evidence. But the evidence does not indicate in any way that Sasquatches are anything but a perfectly normal animal of some sort. And see, the problem is, the Weekly World News and all the tabloid stuff, going to the grocery line and like, Bigfoot ate my baby, Bigfoot joined Al-Qaeda and all those things. They've really put a sheen of ridiculousness on the subject, unfortunately.
It's a tabloid veneer, and I remember I thought to myself, they did the same thing with the chupacabra. And I remember when I first did a report on the chupacabra, it was like I called the Agricultural Center for Puerto Rico, and I spoke Spanish, I still do, and I talked to them, and I said, oh, so tell me what it is. What is this chupacabra? And they said, oh, well, we think it's either some sort of a wild monkey or a dog that is a sick dog. And so they call it a chupacabra because the sick dog is looking for proteins. It attacks animals, sucks their blood out, or eats their flesh and leaves. And then when all of the reports started coming out of these mangy dogs or these mangy raccoons or whatever they are, and they call them chupacabra, oh, that's not a chupacabra. Well, what do you have to compare it to? And I'm thinking, yeah, it is a chupacabra, because I know that when it first came out, it was that. But then, of course, we got the UFO crowd jumping in and saying, well, it kind of looks like an alien, and it's from hell, and blah, 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 blah. And immediately I'm going, well, there goes the story. I mean, I love a good story. I tell good stories all the time.
Oh, yeah, they're wonderful.
Right. But when they get in the way of when you really want to seriously figure out what the hell, it ruins it sometimes. Because
it makes everybody not take the subject very seriously.
Exactly.
And part of some interesting things have happened, since the 70s and 80s when I was growing up, and this was the subject of Sasquatch in general, or any unknown thing like a Bigfoot, was kind of relegated to the UFO unknown category, right? And they are unknown, right? But you can't lump them all together. You can't explain one unknown with another, okay? Right. If Sasquatches are real, which I'm completely confident they are, they should adhere to certain rules of biology, and it turns out they do, And again, I'm an evidence guy, so I always say, well, if Bigfoots are some sort of UFO riding, interdimensional, shape-shifting, whatever, why is it that they're eating roadkill? Can't they do better? Can't they go to the holodeck and just like zip up a steak sandwich or something?
Yeah, beam them back up and feed them, then throw them back down again. It's true. I mean, or they're carrying deer. Right. They're carrying deer on their backs.
Or why is it that their anatomy perfectly conforms to what we know about non-human ape species and also hominins, human ancestors, and the offshoots thereof?
Right.
See, back in the 70s and even the 80s, paleoanthropology, the study of human ancestor fossils, it was fairly new still, because when the Patterson-Gimlin film, for example, came out, Patterson-Gimlin film was filmed in 1967, the scientists at the time, and I think John Napier from the Smithsonian actually is one of these people, saying, well, this is really unusual because no one's ever seen such a mosaic of features. It looks like a gorilla from the waist up, a man from the waist down. And then a few years later, I think in 1974, they unearthed the full skeleton of Lucy, the Australopithecine fossil.
Exactly.
And what did the scientists say when they dug her up? They went, oh, we've never seen such a mosaic of features before. look, from the waist up, she's like a chimpanzee. From the waist down, she's like a human. This is unheard of. But that was the reason they said that Sasquatch in '67 wasn't real.
Well, what about the Kennewick Man? That was another example of...
Kennewick Man, yeah, probably a native, though. They've done a lot of testing on that. A very peculiar-looking native, but nonetheless, a native person, indigenous person in the United States. But as time went on, one of the main arguments from anthropologists about why Sasquatches are not real is that they couldn't be real. Which is a ridiculous place.
Yeah,
no, but since then, things have changed. In the 1990s, in the late 80s, early 1990s, a revolution, a paradigm shift in paleoanthropology came about, where we started realizing these species that we were looking at, they weren't relegated to the far distant past.
Right.
They were actually fairly recent.
Right.
And in fact, in the last, human beings, Homo sapiens, modern humans, have been around for about 300,000 years, maybe longer, but we know for a fact about 300,000 years.
Right.
If we look at the species that coexisted during that time of our own branches, hominins, basically. You have Homo Neanderthals. They died out about 12. I mean, we don't even know if they died out, but we think most recent fossils are about 10, 12,000. We have Luzonensis, the brand new species that was described in a scientific journal in May of 2019 from the Philippines. Homo floresiensis, 50,000 years ago. Homo erectus, as recently as 20 to 50,000 years, and that's a very recent time, and they persisted for millions of years.
Right.
I can go. There's the Heidelbergensis was around at that time. Anyway, there's about 7 different species of our own genus on the planet at the same time. It's very peculiar now, actually, when you look at modern day. This is the only time in the last 6 million years that supposedly there's only one human species persisting. I don't think there are. I think that there are other human species, offshoots of our own line, maybe not what we evolved from, but our relatives, existing on the planet in small pockets. Right. That's called the idea of a relict hominoid. Right. And now suddenly there's a place for Sasquatch in the landscape. And it makes much more sense.
If you really want to irritate people who say, well, we didn't evolve from apes, just say to them, well, we are apes. I mean, we are apes. We are apes. Yeah. We are apes that shave. We are apes that talk. And we are apes that found, we realize our, I guess, fragility. We realize, and we have a spiritual nature to ourselves. We worship God, or we found God.
We're a peculiar ape, but we're definitely an ape.
Yeah, I mean, and people say, well, that's what you want to believe because that makes it sound like an animal. No, it's a euphemism. No, we are not apes, but we are like apes, and another form of them. I don't think we evolved from another species, but what we did is we were just one of many species. Some have died out. In fact, you can find they found Neanderthal DNA in some people that live in the Northeast.
I have it.
Oh, you have
it? Yeah, I got a DNA test from my parents for their birth or Christmas, I think, a few years back. And my father, who's of European descent, has something like 1.3% or something like that. Yeah, there's Neanderthal DNA in us.
Yeah, they find it mostly in Basque, in people that are called Basque people, or the original mud people that lived, what they call the bog people that lived in Ireland.
Yeah, and Europeans have a fair amount of Neanderthal DNA because there's some commingling, which is a really interesting area of study. But I was talking to Dr. Jeff Meldrum from Idaho State University. You've probably spoken to Jeff as well. Yeah. And he says, well, as interesting as that is, what I find really interesting, and what Jeff finds interesting that nobody's talking about, is that why didn't it happen more?
Why is it? Well, that's true. Why isn't it happening more? Unless we're seeing a mutagenesis of what I call neoteny, where we're seeing that we're breeding younger or we're looking younger.
Oh, yeah.
Have you noticed that how, a lot of people have noticed this, and I thought I was the only one who was noticing this. Have you noticed, though, the generations, some of the younger generations are looking younger and they're older?
I thought that was just me getting old. I don't know.
No. I mean, it's actually showing itself that you look at people and you're saying, well, how old are you? And they're like pushing 50 or 60, and they're looking like they're, 30 or 40. And you're wondering, God, what genes do you have? And it's because for some reason, we eat better. We know about health. We take care of ourselves. We're not smoking anymore. A lot of people aren't overly drinking. And so we don't have the ageism that existed back when, our parents and our grandparents and some of us who are in the 50 range that feel this. And so we're seeing a lot of people looking younger. And so that's the thing, is that we think we're seeing the evolution of what would be like some, more medium skin color, hair color, And of course, we have transhumanism, transgenderism. We have all this happening. So maybe we are seeing the evolution and we're not comfortable with it.
Well, I think clearly we're still evolving.
Yeah.
Clearly we're still evolving, and in new sort of ways. There's a term. I forget what the term is. You probably know what it is because I'm into weird things too. Even though I don't think Sasquatches are one of those weird things anymore. I think it's biology.
Right.
I enjoy thinking about these things. Evolving past the genes. There's a word for it. I forget what it is. But we are still evolving, and I think that's really cool. Like just the other day, I got an email from somebody saying, "I don't think we evolved from apes." I said, "Well, we certainly shared a common ancestor. That's how evolution works."
Right.
And there's a huge misunderstanding about how evolution works.
Well, I know.
in general.
Yeah, because people
but
think
we're still here. We are part of the natural environment,
Exactly.
even though it doesn't look like it because we're in the middle of it. You know,
We've created our own environment to help ourselves. Cliff Barackman with us on Channel Weird, and it's a great conversation. It's a fantastic conversation. We'll be back. Don't go away.
AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Are you stressed? I mean, who isn't? Anxiety creeping in? No, not that. Is sleep hard to attain because your brain just won't slow down? We're living in crazy times, and the fear knob has been turned up. Okay, there's an answer. Take a big breath, exhale, and go log on to AncientLifeOil.com. CBD, broad and full spectrum, organic and non-GMO CBD for you to enjoy. Change your tune from fear to calm, from brain overload to clear thinking. 0.003 THC on full spectrum and 0% THC on broad spectrum. Competitive pricing with the best quality. Also know everything is going to get better. No worries, be happy. CBD can help calm so your nerves don't think they're a 6-string electric guitar. Enjoy life, smile, and log on to AncientLifeOil.com for great CBD. That's AncientLifeOil.com. You'll be glad you did.
Hey guys, it's Clyde Lewis. Have you ever wanted Ground Zero merchandise but didn't know where to go? Well, I want to let you know that we now have our own online store with such items as t-shirts, hoodies, decals, tote bags, and other exclusive specialty apparel. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. Coming soon will be signed posters and coffee mugs available as we are constantly adding new items. So shop today at the official Ground Zero store by going to groundzeromerch.com. That's groundzeromerch.com.
Following a disaster, your home emergency kit will be invaluable. Building a kit doesn't take long, and you'll be glad you did when disaster strikes. Here's a list of items to include: a first aid kit, battery-powered or hand crank radio, flashlight, extra batteries, an emergency whistle, cell phone with charger, cash and small bills, a local map with your family meeting place identified, food and water to last 2 weeks, garbage bags, dust masks, and seasonal clothing and footwear. Add prescription medications or any other important items unique to your family's needs. Once you've created your kit, check food expiry dates once a year and update seasonal clothing for growing children. If you have pets, make sure you have everything your furry friends need in an easy-to-carry grab-and-go bag. To learn more about preparing an emergency kit, visit mil.wa.gov/preparedness and get 2 weeks ready.
Be sure to get your low-cost 2-week supply of food with a miraculous 25-year shelf life by going to preparewithgroundzero.com.
Have you noticed that well-known and controversial talk show hosts have recently been censored on the internet by corporate and political interests? This is Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero Radio. And in order to counter against the suppression of information, we've decided to create our own private digitalized playground called Aftermath.media. It's an exclusive online multimedia library featuring videos, movies, audio clips, archive shows, ebooks, e-magazines, documents, and so much more. Our news aggregator, Nucifer, provides current news relating to many of the topics we cover. We'll also be hosting other Ground Zero-friendly podcasts like Into the Paranormal with Jeremy Scott and The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. Aftermath.media has a social media platform along with a chat room to interact with many of our listeners. And about once a month, you can chat with me about anything. Mobile apps for Android and Apple are now available. The monthly subscription for Aftermath.media is only $9.99 a month. This includes exclusive access to our library and Ground Zero archive podcasts. If you're just interested in having access to the archive podcast, it's only $4.99 a month. So sign up today by going to Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media. Here we are, Channel Weird. Cliff Barackman with us. Okay, so I want to talk about something that I'm infamous for with Bigfoot, and that is Bigfoot anatomy. Kind of accidental for me. Basically because this is my, what I call smoking gun, that a lot of these Bigfoot things are not faked. And that is, going back to Patterson-Gimlin film. Bob Gimlin and I were having dinner one day. I was at a Bigfoot conference, and Bob and I just happened to be sitting at a table together, and I was talking with him, and I said, you know, Bob, I want you to come on Ground Zero, and I want to do a little fun little bit with you. And he goes, what's that? And I says, I want to call costume shops. And I want to ask them if they got a costume, an ape costume, that has pendulous breasts. Just call them and say, hey, you guys got a costume, an ape costume with pendulous breasts, because I want to have it for a party. I'll bet you not one costume shop. And at first he's like, oh, what are you talking about, Clyde? You're just crazy. What are you talking about? I says, I bet there's not one costume shop, if you call them tomorrow and say, hey, I need a costume of an ape with big boobs. Can you give it to me? They would not have it, okay? But yet you see the Patterson-Gimlin film, and you look at this ape or whatever it is walking by, and it has big boobs. Mm-hmm. There was an incident in California, and this is a true incident in California, where there's, they have those cameras that monitor the forest areas in California for poachers and everything else. Something with a big hairy arm grabs the camera, is like pulling around, and it pulls it near the crotch, and you see this little thing dangling down, right? And I said, that is a Sasquatch penis, I said. It's tiny, but it's there. And I did a whole show called The Crotch of Sasquatch, the giveaway that this is a real Sasquatch in this movie. And people laughed and said, oh, what a joke, whatever. But damn it, sure, you're not going to think about that. But you look at the Patterson-Gimlin film, and there are boobs on that damn thing. And whatever you see in that California shot, yeah, okay. And so people don't think that if you're looking at an animal, like you look at a dog or a cat, the way you tell whether they're female or male is by their features. And so that's one of the things, the takeaway from the Patterson-Gimlin film, that I always say, well, yeah, of course, there are people that said they wore a costume or they did whatever, and that came out, to try and discredit it. But Bob, when I talked to him, he didn't feel, when I first presented it to him, he was kind of shocked, but then he said, you're right, Clyde. He says, that Bigfoot did have boobs. It had big pendulous breasts. And it's true. If we're going to look at a creature or we're going to look at an animal, you look at its anatomy and see if it's an anatomically correct ape or an anatomically correct creature. What do you think about that?
Well, I've got a couple thoughts, actually. Bob didn't notice it was a female at the time. It was noticed later by looking at the film, which is really interesting. Because I think Bob was probably just overwhelmed with the whole thing at the time, and who wouldn't be, right? But the guy named Bill Munns, I don't know if you know who Bill is. Bill is he's a creature maker. He does museum-quality replicas of extinct mammals for a living. He was actually working in the film industry in 1967, and he undertook a study of the film, the Patterson-Gimlin film, in order to kind of just show, just show it as fake. Well, he couldn't, and now he's completely confident that the film is real, and therefore Sasquatches are real. Mm-hmm. And he did experiments with naked human women, and studied how their boobs bounce. And it turns out that the Patterson-Gimlin film subject, her breasts also move in the exact same manner. Right. Again, just another piece of evidence supporting that particular film.
And the muscle, I was also noticing too, they had I guess they took it and they processed the Patterson-Gimlin film to make it clearer and sharper and whatever. And I noticed a muscle pull on the thigh of the creature, which, if it's a suit, you're not going to see a muscle pull. I mean, I played Bigfoot in a commercial once. They dressed me up. Oh, yeah.
That's rad.
Yeah, they dressed me up, and I was over on Mount Tabor, and they were filming a basketball Nike shoe or some other shoe thing, and they had me in this Bigfoot costume. I don't know how anybody could stand in the heat in a Bigfoot costume without dropping over, because that was pretty clingy, and they actually built the Bigfoot face on me. They had to put in prosthetics and everything to make it look real. And by the end of the segment, I was like, "Oh my God, I can't go through with this anymore," and I almost passed out. So, I mean, that's a lot of hard work to fake something.
Oh, it is. And Roger, the guy who actually was holding the camera, he passed away in the early 70s. He didn't have the knowledge, frankly, of anatomy that would be necessary to create something like that. And also a nice calibration, I guess, would be to compare it to Planet of the Apes. Planet of the Apes came out, I think it was February of 1968, so literally 3 or 4 months after the Patterson-Gimlin film was obtained. But you look at Planet of the Apes and how their ape costumes were, and then you compare it to the Patterson-Gimlin film subject, and there's no comparison at all. The Planet of the Apes costumes, they look very rigid. You know, they had to shake their head to make their mouth move at all, and they had to hide most of the body under human clothes to even to pull it off. And Planet of the Apes got an Academy Award for the special effects. That was cutting edge at the time. They didn't have like muscle groups moving together that can be plainly seen in the Patterson-Gimlin film. They didn't have the shoulder blades moving underneath the skin that you can also see in the Patterson-Gimlin film. You can also the PG film also shows what's called, I think it's piloerection, which is the hairs bristling up on her back as she looks over at Bob when he rides across the river, which gives us that famous 352 shot in the frame 352. And you can see her foot bending in the middle, because Sasquatches have a great degree of foot flexibility, unlike humans, but like every other ape species and most other hominin species.
Right.
That wasn't even dissected, so to speak. That wasn't put out there for public knowledge until the year 2000 or 2001, but yet you can see that feature in the film, and you can also see it in most, not all, but most Sasquatch footprint casts as well, about how that foot bends and how that changes the shape of the damage under the ground, leaving the footprint. So.
Yeah, I mean I think that's the smoking gun, and I look at it all the time, and then people say, "Oh, it's fake," but no, the more I look at it, the more I see things being done to it. I just realize, and knowing Bob and being in Bob's presence and talking with Bob directly and looking at his, I guess you could say body language and the way he thinks things through, I just don't see it. I don't see, a fake thing going on here. I see a genuine human being. Bob is very genuine. And I feel privileged to even be in his presence and to talk with him directly, because I know, I just can see and sense that what he experienced was very real to him.
Yeah, well, Roger got some funding to go out and do this film, because Roger was actually following up on footprint events from August of 1967 up on Blue Creek Mountain, and he tried to get there sooner, but he was doing an expedition at Mount St. Helens, and eventually he got Bob in tow, and basically a ride from Bob because it was his truck, and they went down to Bluff Creek and spent about 2 weeks there. The guy who funded him, a guy named Aldi Atley, who just recently passed away, I think last year, and who lived out in Yakima. Aldi Atley was promised, like, if we get anything, you get a third of it because you're funding us. Roger will get a third, and Bob will get a third. Well, that didn't happen, it turns out. Bob never got anything from it, and he was so kind of just cheated in a lot of ways that he was so tired of being called a liar, and it really disrupted his social life and like the community and his reputation. He eventually sold all rights to the film for $1. Because he was so tired of being called a liar. And yet, if anybody has a motive of outing the hoax, if it was a hoax, it would be Bob. But to this day, he goes, "No, Cliff, what I saw was a living, breathing animal. It moved like a big animal. Bob's 87 or something now. He's like in his upper 80s, and he still breaks horses, for a living. He knows what big, wild animals move like. And he says, what I saw was a real animal."
He told me that before Roger died, he said that Roger really wanted to hunt one. That they had talked about going out and going to the same area again and maybe hunting one. How do you feel about the idea of hunting one, getting a specimen, maybe a dead specimen? What do you feel about that?
That's the only way forward, honestly. I mean, I'm not going to be the one pulling the trigger, mind you. I'm not a gun guy or anything. I have a firearm or two, but I'm not a gun guy, and I'm just not the guy. And I have very mixed feelings about it because I'm a compassionate person and I don't want one of them shot, but I'm also not naive. I understand that science demands a holotype or a type specimen or a dead one, whatever word you want to use for it. Holotype is kind of sanitized. It makes it seem, a little bit more sterile, but a dead Sasquatch is the truth. That's what it is. Yeah. And without that, you can't proceed forward into academic studies of the animal. And you certainly can't proceed forward into protecting the animal nor its habitat without a dead one. Now, I'm not going to be the one pulling the trigger, but I don't think I need to either, because eventually a very frightened hunter will pull the trigger, or maybe a logging truck will run one down on the way to work in the morning, or something is happening. That's not my role, is to try to prove the species. I'm not trying to prove the species because I'm not trying to shoot one, and that's what it's going to take, unfortunately. I'm trying to educate the public about the species to soften the blow of discovery when that eventuality does
I think a lot
occur.
of people don't know that the panda was like Bigfoot at one time.
Where they
they thought it was some legendary creature, some teddy bear-like creature. And then one day they saw a skin hanging up in Mongolia in some guy's hut. I said, "What is that?" I said, "Well, it's some strange creature that I shot. Looked like a bear that had, black and white fur and whatever." And finally, they found one. And I think the first one that we ever had in captivity was in 1935.
It was a while. The panda was actually proven to be real. And I think I don't have my dates, and you should always check my dates, because I got a lot of numbers floating in my head.
Right.
But it's something like the 1880s or something like that. And that's when the skin and the bones came back, and they said, "Oh my God, these are real." And they described it in a blah, blah, blah. The next one they got was like the 1920s.
Yep.
It took like 30 years to get another one. And, in pandas, as wonderful as they are, they're not the sleek nocturnal forest ninjas that we're dealing with Sasquatch here.
No, it's true. I mean, and I was really surprised. I read that somewhere that the panda itself is about, it's a creature that is, been known only for about 150 years, which is interesting. We have Cliff Barackman with us, Animal Planet. You've seen him. You've watched his show, Finding Bigfoot. We're going to end this in the next segment and talk more about his museum here in the Pacific Northwest. So we'll be back with more from Cliff right here on Channel Weird.
AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Are you stressed? I mean, who isn't? Anxiety creeping in? No, not that. Is sleep hard to attain because your brain just won't slow down? We're living in crazy times, and the fear knob has been turned up. Okay, there's an answer. Take a big breath, exhale, and go log on to AncientLifeOil.com. CBD, broad and full spectrum, organic and non-GMO CBD for you to enjoy. Change your tune from fear to calm, from brain overload to clear thinking. 0.003 THC on full spectrum and 0% THC on broad spectrum. Competitive pricing with the best quality. Also know everything is going to get better. No worries, be happy. CBD can help calm so your nerves don't think they're a 6-string electric guitar. Enjoy life, smile, and log on to AncientLifeOil.com for great CBD. That's AncientLifeOil.com. You'll be glad you did.
Hey guys, it's Clyde Lewis. Have you ever wanted Ground Zero merchandise but didn't know where to go? Well, I want to let you know that we now have our own online store with such items as t-shirts, hoodies, decals, tote bags, and other exclusive specialty apparel. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. Coming soon will be signed posters and coffee mugs available as we are constantly adding new items. So shop today at the official Ground Zero store by going to groundzeromerch.com. That's groundzeromerch.com. Hey guys, it's Clyde Lewis. Have you ever wanted Ground Zero merchandise but didn't know where to go? Well, I want to let you know that
Following
we now
a disaster,
have
your
our
home
own
emergency
online
kit will be invaluable. Building a kit doesn't take long, and you'll be glad you did when disaster strikes. Here's a list of items to include: a first aid kit, battery-powered or hand crank radio, flashlight, extra batteries, an emergency whistle, cell phone with charger, cash and small bills, a local map with your family meeting place identified, food and water to last 2 weeks, garbage bags, dust masks, and seasonal clothing and footwear. Add prescription medications or any other important items unique to your family's needs. Once you've created your kit, check food expiry dates once a year and update seasonal clothing for growing children. If you have pets, make sure you have everything your furry friends need in an easy-to-carry grab-and-go bag. To learn more about preparing an emergency kit, visit mil.wa.gov/preparedness and get 2 weeks ready.
Be sure to get your low-cost 2-week supply of food with a miraculous 25-year shelf life by going to preparewithgroundzero.com.
Have you noticed that well-known and controversial talk show hosts have recently been censored on the internet by corporate and political interests? This is Clyde Lewis from Ground Zero Radio. And in order to counter against the suppression of information, we've decided to create our own private digitalized playground called Aftermath.media. It's an exclusive online multimedia library featuring videos, movies, audio clips, archive shows, ebooks, e-magazines, documents, and so much more. Our news aggregator, Nucifer, provides current news relating to many of the topics we cover. We'll also be hosting other Ground Zero-friendly podcasts like Into the Paranormal,
Paranormal with Jeremy Scott and The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable. Aftermath.media has a social media platform along with a chat room to interact with many of our listeners. And about once a month, you can chat with me about anything. Mobile apps for Android and Apple are now available. The monthly subscription for Aftermath.media is only $9.99 a month. This includes exclusive access to our library and Ground Zero Archive podcasts. If you're just interested in having access to the archive podcast, it's only $4.99 a month. So sign up today by going to Aftermath.media. Again, that's Aftermath.media.
Channel Weird, we're back. I want to talk about your show. I want to talk about Discovery Plus. I want to talk about the whole package now, and I want to talk about your museum. First of all, let's talk about what's going on with Finding Bigfoot, your series, what's going on with the Discovery Plus. How do they get it? What do they do to get it?
Well, yeah, we have a new episode. We have a 2-hour special that just came out. And it's the first time we've got the band back together, so to speak, in a few years. The last time we filmed was 2017. It aired in 2018, and we've been quiet ever since. It's because so many people are going to streaming services that cable is kind of, honestly, probably slowly dying away. We'll see what happens with it. But they've lost a lot of viewership, and we're an expensive, very popular show, I think. At least I think that's what's going on. I'm not sure. But Discovery Communications owns a lot of channels. They said, and they decided, well, let's get a streaming service together. It's called Discovery Plus. It's like $4.99 a month. It's pretty cheap, actually. And there's a couple ways you can get it for free, like through Verizon or, I don't know, some other stuff. I don't know that much about it, and I just subscribe because it's cheap, and all the channels I watch are already there. Mm-hmm. But they invited us back because there's a lot of things going on. You know, people are retreating to the woods. And because of that, Sasquatch sightings are slightly up, you know, because more people are out where Sasquatches live. And also, there's been an area in the country, southeast Ohio and West Virginia, that have been producing a lot of Bigfoot evidence. And so Animal Planet says, hey, you guys, let's do something with this, you know. And so we filmed a 2-hour special where we focus on southeast Ohio and West Virginia. Mm-hmm. And we investigate some really amazing vocalizations from this location that's been producing activity for the last several years. We have footprint cast. We have a photograph of a Sasquatch we investigate, and then we also employ some cutting-edge technology that wasn't even available last time we were filming, as recently as 2017. It's this really, really cutting-edge stuff, and it was a lot of fun to get everybody back together, and it's available on Discovery Plus streaming anytime you want to watch it, as well as every other of the 100 episodes of Finding Bigfoot that we filmed. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of a neat situation, and it'll eventually air on Animal Planet. But at this point, everybody's going to streaming, so they put it out on streaming first to get those people first dibs on it, so to speak. But it will be on Animal Planet.
You're saying vocalizations. What are they sounding like these days? I mean, I sound like Mongolian fishermen when I've been listening to some of these things.
Well, they make a wide variety of vocalizations, of course. But in southeast Ohio, there's a property where the weird things were happening, but the property owner didn't say Bigfoot, you know, until he saw one stealing his chickens out of his chicken pen, you know, and then he chased it off and shot at it in the whole nine. And then he says, well, that must be what's making these noises. And he called this researcher from the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization, this woman named B. Mills. And over the years, she's now set up a 24/7 recording project on the property. Every moment of the day, they're recording on this property, and it takes a tremendous amount of work to go through all that. But she's gotten literally hours of strange vocalizations from the property, mostly long howls, very peculiar long, like that kind of stuff. Yeah. But the analysis of these vocalizations can't match it to any other known animal in North America.
Wow.
You know, when you combine that with footprints from the property and observations of Sasquatches, I mean, it's
always
deal.
chilling to hear a Sasquatch. You know,
it's amazing.
And what could be a Sasquatch, I guess, and something else. Tell us about the museum. Tell us how that's going on. It's up there. You know, give the location, because I'm sure that people, you know, I remember when I first came to Northwest, I want to see a really good Bigfoot museum, and I just never was able to find one. And then I met you, and I thought, you know, it's one of those things where I always say, if I ever find a Bigfoot museum, I'm going to go there. And I haven't been to your museum, and I got to go, because it's just it's less than 5 miles from my house.
It's not far. It's not far at all. It's actually right between basically Gresham and Mount Hood, Gresham and Sandy, you know, that one stretch there. If you go down on Highway 26 and you get off at the Highway 212 exit, we're right there, right next to the pizza place. And
I live on Highway 26.
Well, there you go. Yeah, you come on down. You can practically walk there.
I know. Yeah. It's insane. I live right there. in the Powell Butte area. And so it's funny because we live in Powell Butte, and Powell Butte's one of those places where you go like maybe, I don't know, a block, and all these nice homes exist, and all the forest is there, and you're like going, oh, it's so beautiful. Then you go the block other direction, and that's where I live. It's like, oh, got a homeless camp, got a strip club, we got all this other stuff going on. And I'm thinking, gosh, but then you go into these places where it's just amazing, and then you have your museum out there, and so I was just curious as to where it was.
Yeah, the North American Bigfoot Center is what it's called. And again, just go to Highway 26 and Highway 212. We have an address, but it's kind of funky, and the GPS puts you a few miles down the road. We're literally right on the intersection of Highway 212 and Highway 26. We're sometimes hard to find just because of the address situation. But, it's a Bigfoot museum. Anybody who comes to us is looking for Bigfoot. We've got to be hard to find, too. We're slightly easier to find than a Sasquatch.
Is it? Yeah. Is there admission price?
Well, we have a bunch of free stuff on the walls in the gift store, like Cass on display and stuff like that. If you want to get into the back where I hide most of the really cool stuff, it's just $8, unless, of course, you qualify for some sort of discount, like you're over 60, under 12, or veteran, or, convince me. Convince me you deserve a discount. Maybe I'll give you a couple bucks off, because I'm not a good businessman. I'm just a good man.
Okay. Our urban sprawl is growing. We're getting a lot of property that's being swallowed up by construction, by just enterprise, literally. Do you think there'll come a time where we're going to be pushing Bigfoot out and Bigfoot's going to get aggressive? Because I'm hearing more reports of aggressive Bigfoot encounters where Bigfoot is probably tired of us moving into his territory and he starts being aggressive. We're going to hear more accounts of aggressive Bigfoot.
I think that if that's happening anywhere, it might be in Florida. Florida, they have this tendency to pave everywhere that's cool, unfortunately, and change it into the Epcot Center or something. So I think that's a shame, because, the Florida ecosystem is just amazing. It's tropical, it's jungly, it's swampy and stuff. So if there's anywhere that we're actually doing any damage to Sasquatch populations because of our tendency to pave everything, is probably down there. Most other places that Sasquatches exist, they're right under our nose. I mean, I live in the town of Sandy, or actually just a little bit outside of Sandy. I've actually taken, in my opinion, credible sighting reports from like Bluff Road, which is right on Sandy, right outside of Sandy. It's kind of suburbia, but it's also right on the edge of like the Sandy River, where the fish hatchery is and all this other stuff. And it's a hop, skip, and a jump to Mountain Hood National Forest. Sasquatch has come in very, very close. A friend of mine told me one time, and he's absolutely correct, Cliff, you only own your property during the day.
Yeah,
I've
heard that Stevenson is a hotbed too.
Oh yeah, sure.
I haven't hung out in Stevenson long enough, but people have told me, yeah, in Stevenson, you see them all the time and they get used to it. Skamania County is always a good place. I don't know. I mean, I saw mine in Klickitat County, which of course, there was a lot of things going on at the time. And one of the sad things, though, is that I've always felt that Cougar, Mount St. Helens area was a place, but I think after the eruption, I think it kind of died down a bit. What do you think?
Well, I mean, maybe for a little while, but they're back.
Are they?
Oh yeah, sure. A few years ago, I took 2 or 3 reports in one summer on the walk between Ape Caves and the parking lot.
Yeah.
Somebody saw one, and 2 other people reported whistles and vocalizations, and also rock throwing. No, they're still in the area. Absolutely, I've seen footprint from the area as well. They are absolutely still there. See, even these fires down here in the Clackamas and stuff. We cast footprints about 2 weeks ago, not far from where the fires were. The fires probably pushed them out of one area, they moved into another. We got footprint cast from that.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I think I saw Bigfoot, because there was a fire on the north end of Mount Adams, and I'm sure that they were migrating out of the area, moving into another area, because wherever the fires are, they move away. I know that there was a sighting in Grants Pass because there was a fire out there too. And I guess these fires that we have, these major fires, are basically great times to find Bigfoot. And there were a lot of sightings, I remember, because I went to a Bigfoot festival. It was about, it was like after we had some fires going on just out there off of I-84, and people were saying, they were seeing, Bigfoot on I-84 in the exit areas. And they were being picked up by traffic cams, and these huge, like this walking man. It looked like walking like right down the highway, and then would just disappear in the brush and down the side. And they were the subject of. There was a Bigfoot festival that we did. Where was it? I can't remember exactly where it was. It was in Washington, and they were actually focused on. There was one that looked like a cardboard cutout that everybody thought it was a cardboard cutout that was sitting there, and obviously it looked like one because it stayed in the same position after they had filmed it again. But there was that one where he was. I think it was like, I don't know if it was on 84 or some other exit, where the Bigfoot was walking and it was being picked up by cams, and they had different angles of it. And yeah, I mean, the cams are up there, so it looked like but it was tall because you looked at the guardrail and you look at everything on the sides, and you try to compare it to the surroundings. That thing was about 8 to 10 feet tall.
Well, I'm really looking forward to studying the areas that have been burned out, because now that all the ground cover has been burned out, in a few years it's all going to regrow, and then the herbivores like deer and everything else are going to be moving back in, and the predators like Sasquatches will follow.
Wow. It like I said, it's just it's an amazing topic if you can get past this whole tabloid veneer of what it's been.
Yeah, there's real science.
There's real science behind it. And like I said, you can believe supernatural nature of this if you want, if it just makes you feel good.
Yeah, it's fun.
I mean, well, there's the I think the Native American spin where it is a religious type of spiritual animal, and everything has a spirit, in that regard.
And I respect that.
Yeah, I do too, and I have no problem with it being a spiritual animal because they have a lot of spiritual animals. There's always spiritual animals or spirit animals, but when they start getting into this whole idea that it's some dimensional creature that's being programmed by the aliens, I get a little,
Yeah, again, evidence. Please follow the evidence.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Discovery Plus.
Animal Planet.
Eventually. Finding Bigfoot.
Yep.
And such a pleasure having you in this format talking about this. I'm sure a lot of people that are watching are really going to walk away feeling good about, believing again, which is something amazing.
Yeah, I may be weird, but I'm not stupid and crazy.
That is true. Anyway, thank you guys for joining us, Channel Weird, and we'll be here next week again. So thanks a lot. And we'll see you soon.